Raider Nation, what's good? Jesse Merrick here. Welcome to another episode of the Silver and Black Sports Network podcast. Today, we're taking this Raiders coaching search one step further. I'm bringing former Raiders wide receiver Ryan Hoag back onto the show, and we're going through the candidates to figure out who actually makes sense for this organization from a schematic standpoint. Ryan names the coach that he thinks should be the next Raiders head coach. And I'll just say this, it's probably not who you're expecting. It surprised me. Plus, because it's Ryan Hoag, you know that he's coming in with a wild idea. This one could seriously shake up the coaching landscape and potentially put the Raiders in position to land one of the best coaches in the business right now. We do have a little bit of fun with this episode, and we really dig into all the different ways that this search could play out. And as always, Matt Peralta is going to be joining us again for another episode of Raiders Rounders with his best bets as the weekend slated game comes our way. But before we get to all that, you know what time it is? We got to get to our question of the day. Now that Dante Moore has officially decided to stay in college, the value of that number one pick is as high as it has ever been. So I want to know, is there any scenario where you guys would entertain trading out of that top pick? If there is, what's the deal that could actually move you off of taking Fernando Mendoza number one overall? Lay it out in the comments. Before you guys freak out on me, you know where I stand. I'm staying put, taking Mendoza and riding into the future with my franchise quarterback. But if you see it differently, I want to hear it. Tell me why. And real quick, too, a shout out to all of our new subscribers. We've had a ton of you guys jump on lately, and I do really appreciate it, so thanks for joining us. And if you haven't yet, smash that subscribe button here on YouTube, and please do head to silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and subscribe to our free Raiders newsletter. It's a one-stop shop for Raiders news and analysis delivered straight to your inbox every Friday morning. And like I said, it's completely free, so you can't beat it. All right, guys, so with that all out of the way, let's dive into today's show. All right, Ryan, welcome back into the show. The season is obviously in the books. You brought the heat all year long. Now we get to kind of play the what-if game, but I think we're going to move forward with the assumption that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the guy for the Raiders at number one overall. You've made your feelings clear on him. I'm curious today now, just as things have transpired in the coaching search for the Raiders, how you're feeling about the names and all the guys that they brought in and which direction you ultimately think they need to go in terms of offensive or defensive.
Yeah, that's $1 million question. And,
yeah.
I'm a little hesitant to just assume that Fernando's the guy simply because he still has a game to play. And, and again, he's one of my favorite players I've scouted and watched the last couple of years in college football. But injuries are a reality. And if something were to happen from the injury front, I mean, we look at the Florida State quarterback a couple of years ago, not that he was going to be number one overall, but again, and I don't want to even put that into the universe, but it is a reality. So for people just thinking it's signed, sealed, delivered, that's the number one pick. I think let's wait until, this national championship game is over. Let's make sure, he's healthy and, or at the NFL Combine, they find a lot of different things, whether it's health related and, sickle cell anemia or, a degenerative heart condition, whatever it may be. So, but all those things, like, unless something tragic or crazy, in those health screenings happen, I do assume, to your point, that Fernando will be the number one pick. And, again, barring, 4 first-round picks in Kyler Murray or something like that from Arizona or whatever, I don't see us moving off of that spot. And quite frankly, I've said all along, I think this is a one quarterback class. I know Mel Kiper just came out today and just said that he thinks 4 quarterbacks potentially could be in the first round, with Trinidad and the Alabama quarterback and obviously Dante. But I think there is one quarterback, and that's obviously Fernando, that is going to be a plug and play starter and longtime starter, and that's Fernando. And whereas the rest of the guys you're looking at, maybe Mac Jones as a ceiling kind of thing. And again, Mac Jones has carved himself a much more, successful career than I had, for example, and things like that. But if that's what you're looking at as from a first round quarterback, you probably want a little more bang for your buck. Back to your question with regards to the coaching search. And, I think the place I want to start, Jesse, is talking about the NFC North the AFC North, and the fact that if you were to look at all 4 of those teams, I would argue that the Cincinnati Bengals were the team that probably underachieved the most. And obviously Baltimore certainly underachieved, but they were still in it, and they had a chance to win the division last week this season. Like, Cincinnati was eliminated about week 11, and you have 3 of those 4 coaches, I believe, and you could fact check me on this, but I think 3 of the 4 coaches, the 3 that were fired, were all coach of the year at some point in their careers. So. And the only one that stayed was the team that was the most disappointing and had the coach that has the most flaws on its resume. It's a fascinating thing. And, it just shows that professional sports, and Aaron Rodgers alluded to it a little bit, that we're just in such an immediate gratifying world that, you need to see results right now. And now I will say that Mike Tomlin, again, one of my former coaches, sometimes you come and just like a relationship with a partner, it comes to a close, and it's for better or for worse. It was probably best for both parties to just move on and see what's next. And that's not to say that, like, I don't know that it will be done again. 19 straight years with a winning record?
Yeah.
Like, it's
crazy.
Unbelievable. But the reality is, I think Andy Reid is probably the best coach in my lifetime. I think he's actually better than Bill Belichick. And he was fired from the Philadelphia Eagles, despite them going to how many NFC championships in a row, right?
It's true.
And he didn't have the long time success that Tomlin was able to have in terms of those winning seasons. I mean, they're picking 9th this year in the draft for a reason. And it's not because Patrick Mahomes was injured. It was just because that's the reality of the NFL. Everybody's good. So all that to say, you look at the assembly line of available coaches that have head coaching pedigrees, and the list is long and impressive. 2-time coach of the year, Kevin Stefanski, 2-time in the last 5 years since COVID, I believe he's been coach of the year
in Cleveland too. Like, in Cleveland, that has to be taken into account.
With Deshaun Watson and his theatrics and his contract and all the things like that. That's unbelievable that and then there were people calling for Dan Quinn this year. Like, is he going to last? I remember Jay Glazer, I think, did a report, Dan Quinn appears safe. And I'm like, this guy completely turned a team from 3 wins to 13 the following year, or plus 10 or whatever it was.
A big turnaround, and whatever it was. Yeah, it was big.
They certainly they had expectations, and when there's expectations, there's advanced scrutiny, but that's the reality we're living in. And it's a cutthroat world. Obviously, professional sports always is, when you're dealing with billion-dollar industries and you're dealing with billion-dollar teams and the CEOs that just aren't necessarily equipped. I consider CEOs the head coaches personally, not the owners or things like that. But so all that to say, a few names jump off the page for me when it comes to the Raiders search. And obviously, I think Mike Tomlin's not going to coach this coming up year. I think he's, and whether or not he would, even consider the Raiders, it could be a fun kind of challenge for him. But I think he's honest in knowing that, hey, I want to spend some time with my family, and I'd be great on TV. I could make the same amount of money on TV and not have to deal with like all the haters out there and no appreciation of what I'm doing. Like, that sounds pretty good to me.
Heck yeah. I'll take that.
Exactly. And then I look at a guy like Kevin Stefanski, another guy that was my coach in Minnesota. He was quality control coach. Certainly would be up for the tumultuousness that the Raiders provide, because he survived it in Cleveland. If you can survive in Cleveland and that passionate fan base and things like that, it's very blue collar, similar to, Raider fans and things like that, and media coverage, very similar. I think he would be an outstanding choice. I would be absolutely behind him. Would he move the needle for Raider fans to get them really excited? Probably not, but maybe that's exactly what the Raiders need. I mean, to be honest with you, they need that kind of that steadying force that just, keeps it, consistent, and there's going to be, collaboration, but also that consistent voice where, okay, this is the guy, and he's going to lead us. We just need to give him some time and resources, and we're going to be behind him. But again, he wouldn't be my number one choice, but I would be happy if Kevin Stefanski were the
Mm.
coach. A name that's really intriguing for me is Clint Kubiak, which obviously a lot of Raider fans are excited about. Personality wise, Jesse, I don't know. Again, is he going to really move the needle with Raider fans?
Mm.
What I've heard out of Seattle is that he is kind of just one of those guys that's kind of just like
Yeah.
meh interview,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, again, and maybe that's exactly what you need, especially when you have a rookie quarterback coming in, most likely, and things like that. That's expected to start. Uh, the thing that intrigues me about Clint, Jesse, is that
Mhm.
he was a 4-year starter, I believe, at Colorado State as a safety. And obviously, either middle linebacker or safety usually are considered the quarterbacks of the defense. So he has a
Yeah.
really unique perspective being on the defensive side of the ball. And then you look at his coaching pedigree, obviously his dad, but his personal coaching pedigree. It's quarterback coach, it's wide receiver coach, it's offensive assistant, it's passing game coordinator, it's offensive coordinator. So in multiple coaching regimes. So for him to have a player's perspective on the back end defensively, and then have this offensive expertise because he's coached at such a high level, I think that's not getting talked about enough. That's a really
Mhm.
unique perspective, because I know if I got thrown in to go coach on the defensive side of the football, I'd be like, whoa, like I certainly can provide some really good insight, but to be able to lead, Jesse, a defensive, like a coordinator position or anything like that, from my perspective now, not even close.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put me as a wide receiver coach or offensive coordinator, absolutely. But on that defensive side, like it would take some time to learn that side of the ball, which I think he's put in his time. And obviously, you see the difference between Smith and Jigma and
Yeah.
his season, and
Big time. Leading the league in receiving.
yeah,
I mean, that's impressive.
yeah, and and then putting how they've how they've dealt with two running backs and feeding both of them and keeping them both happy and utilizing those guys in the passing game, which is something I was screaming about all year long and hasn't happened for the Raiders. So I think we could really utilize that skill set that Clint. And then another name that I wonder why he's not getting enough appreciation, and I might be butchering his last name, but Grant Udinski. And he's the
Mm-hmm.
offensive coordinator for the Jaguars. And I'm going
Yeah.
to read you a quote by Kevin O'Connell, who's the Minnesota Vikings head coach. Grant worked under him. And he said, interviewing Grant, and this was prior to the Jaguars, Grant was with the Vikings. And he said, interviewing Grant was like interviewing a guy who could build a car from scratch for a job at a car wash. And and that's pretty impressive. And Jaguars, again, it's very similar to where the Raiders have been the past 20 years, just a perennially bad team. I mean, they had a year and a half that were pretty good with Jalen Ramsey and things like that, but Blake Bortles, Tom Coughlin, but otherwise, like, they've been kind of a doormat of the AFC South for a long time. Look how many revolving doors of coaches from Urban Meyer and so on. But for them to be able to completely turn it around, you see that Trevor Lawrence had, like, arguably he was MVP of the season the last 10 weeks of the season. And I attribute a lot of that. Obviously, Liam Cohen deserves a lot of that credit,
Yeah.
but Grant Udinski and people that I've talked to or heard from around the league are effusive with praise. I mean, again, he's young, he's 30 years old, but I like the thought of pairing a really young offensive minded coach with Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, that's what gets my blood like excited and thinking about the potential of a core nucleus of offensive weapons and a young quarterback, and then a really young, in coach that has, his own way that he's going to want to do it, but also understands kind of this day and age athlete of, hey, well, I'm not going to just pound my fist and be like, this is the way we're going to do it, sink or swim. And really that those Gen X or Gen Z people are the only ones that really kind of understand how to navigate those waters, which is tricky these days.
Yeah. And we've seen the Raiders in their history too lean young with a handful of coaches. Obviously, I think Madden was 32 when they hired him. Lane was in his 30s. I'm forgetting off the top of my head how old he actually was when they hired him. But we have seen them too in this process look at a handful of young offensive minds. You have Davis Webb from the Broncos, who's their quarterbacks coach. He's 30 years old. Also too, Nathan Shieldhouse, I believe he's 35. He's the Rams passing game coordinator. Another former quarterback as well. And then also, like you said, with Udinski, we'll see what happens, with him. But I think it is an interesting thing, and I've worn the heck out of this thing out because Aaron Davis, who's a Raiders fan, we've gone back and forth on Twitter a bit, and he suggested this, and I hadn't thought about it yet, but like that the fact that the Raiders aren't in position to win right now, so maybe one of these young coaches isn't necessarily ready to be a head coach right now, but the Raiders aren't in position to win right now, so why not bring him in with a young quarterback and let them all develop at the same time and kind of move, forward as well. And that to me is something that's super interesting of just letting that timeline of development come together. And maybe in 3 years, they're all ready to win. And that could be a game changer for the Raiders.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the key word is going to be patience, something the Raiders fans haven't had in a while and justifiably so. But, and if I'm a head coach and I'm looking at the 9 openings, like a lot of people want to say that the Raiders are the most attractive, and whereas it's pretty polarizing. Some people say it's the worst, and some people say the best. The issue I would have if I'm a new coach or an old coach is, given the past 5 years, like what's giving me confidence that you guys are actually going to have patience if we start the season 1-7, right? And that you're going to just be like, hey, this is where we're at. This is part of the process, because guess what? I guarantee Antonio Pierce wouldn't have jumped at the opportunity if he knew that, hey, I have to win this year, otherwise I'm gone. So that's where it's kind of a catch-22. I'm going to push back on you a little bit, Jesse, because I know that you've often said that you don't want to, you would prefer an offensive head coach because a defensive head coach would bring an offensive coordinator that, and I don't want to steal your words, but haven't you said something along the lines of you don't want them to get plucked from another team or take, right?
Essentially, you hit on the OC, and it's probably only a matter of time till they do get plucked or poached by another team because they've had success, because that's kind of in vogue in the NFL. But definitely.
So I love Jesse Minter. I think he'd be a fantastic head coach. He's familiar with the division, and obviously has never had an opportunity. He's due an opportunity. I think he will get one this year. I think Matt Burke is another one, Houston's defensive coordinator, that doesn't get enough love and would be a fantastic head coach. But again, it's a matter of who you surround yourself with in terms of that offensive coordinator. My question to you, Jess, we're going to go with trivia. Who's the last Raiders who's the last Raiders assistant coach to be plucked because of their success?
The last Raiders assistant coach to be plucked because of their success. And
I'm talking only offense or defensive coordinator, right? Because it might be a wide receiver. But
man, nobody comes to mind now that I'm thinking about it. Who is it?
Well,
a while ago, right?
I'll tell you in a second, but it's been a while. Yeah, it's certainly been a while, and so that's where that's the only reason I say I'm going to push back a little bit, because that's a good problem to have, certainly, right? If we're offense is clicking like that, right, then absolutely we should welcome the opportunity for these guys to, grow their wings and move forward. It was in 2016, so just 10 years ago, Bill Musgrave, offensive coordinator, he ended up he ended up getting taken, and the Raiders were 12-4. It was the last time they were good, right? But so that's the only reason I put that on pause, Jesse, is because it's rare, especially with our organization, because we just haven't been in those types of situations to succeed. So I would say to make just a general statement to be like, I would prefer offense versus defense, because I don't want my guys. I want all my coaches. If I'm a head coach and they wanted to hire me, my goal would be, hey, my goal is to have every single one of my assistants be like the Sean McVay tree, or be like the Kyle Shanahan tree, where it's just going to be, I'm going to I'm going to look and be proud of that guy who's now the quarterback coach, who was my quarterback coach, is now OC, and now he's going to be a head coach in 3 years. Like, that's something that, and again, I think having a younger coach to really set the foundation and that groundwork to be able to navigate the waters however they want to do it in their own unique way, and then have people buy in, their coaching staff buy in, having the players buy in, the fans buy in, and understand that, hey, this is going to be a ripple effect, and watch. Like, that's really exciting to think about. And that's why I would caution saying just blanket statements like, hey, I don't want a defensive coordinator because offense coordinator might get plucked down the road.
Yeah, no, and that's totally fair, because like look at the teams that have been plucked away, that have had their coordinators and play callers plucked away, or have been kind of like the in vogue staffs where people are pulling from, and they've still had success. They've found a way to replace those guys, so it is totally fair to have that counter argument for sure. I just think more than anything for me, the reason I feel that way is because of like getting the continuity, and you can still have the continuity as different staff members move up, but the continuity between play caller and coach, I feel like that's how you really kick it to the next level. But there are so many times that look, if you get it right at your head coach, I agree with you in a sense where if you get it right with that guy, it probably doesn't matter if people are getting plucked, because you trust their ability to replace those guys. I do want to get back into the coaches in a second here, but we were talking before we got this going. We were waiting for Dante Moore to declare or not. He actually just went on SportsCenter as we're taping this. For full disclosure, everybody, we're taping this here on Wednesday. This will be dropping Thursday morning. But Dante Moore just decided to go back to Oregon. So now that leaves Fernando Mendoza as the lone top QB, probably realistically to go in even the top 10. And we know number 1 is probably where he's going. But I'm curious your reaction to Dante's decision to go back to Oregon, or at least back to college. We'll see what happens.
Right, because they just brought in Raiola from Nebraska. Yeah, I'm sure there are going to be offers for him to make $7 million, for 1 year, $8 million, who knows, whether it's at Oregon or somewhere else. College sports aren't college sports anymore. It's professional sports. It's just like a club program. And the thing is, Jesse, and this is what I would push my kids if I have kids someday, or anybody that like wants my 2 cents. You have the opportunity to go back to a campus, or go to a campus just in general, be worshiped, loved, be the most popular guy when you walk in the bar. Every, cheerleader fan, everybody wants any time with you. And mind you, you're making $7 million.
Yeah.
Why rush it? Why rush that? I understand that the NFL, or hear me out, or you could go to the New York Jets, right? A perennially losing program, right? Sure, you can get 40 million guaranteed or whatever it's going to be. But you're gonna walk into a bar, nobody's gonna know who you are, probably in New York at least, right? I mean, or not like football players. That's the one thing. Like, people don't understand.
Yeah, they wear helmets.
They don't. Patrick Mahomes certainly, but you wear a helmet, and not a lot of, like, you can, like, guys my size, 6'3", 200 pounds. Like, I can walk around and people are like, yeah, he looks athletic, but
that's a blessing too, though. Sometimes
maybe he played. Yeah, exactly, right, and so. I don't know that Dante Moore would be beloved. He's going to be hyper analyzed by anything he does off the field, right? Oh, he was out at a club on a Friday night during training camp. They're one night off, and he's going to get butchered in the media. Nothing he does will ever be good enough, because he's going to be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. So he's going to be scrutinized. No longer beloved. Yes, he's making a little bit more money, but guess what? No longer is it playing for your guys in the huddle. Now it's playing for yourself and your livelihood. And there is a big, big difference, Jesse, of playing for the love of the game, like you did in high school, like you did at Azusa, like I did at Gustavus, right? And granted, we were NAI and D3, a little different, but that, and then juxtaposing that to pro and understanding, like, I know the backup quarterback is excited if I get hurt, because that's their opportunity to get film and feed their family. Like, it's, don't rush it. College kids, man. I mean, and sometimes it's a no-brainer, certainly, right? But in this case, knowing that he'd probably go to the Jets, and just where college athletics are now and being able to pay so handsomely. Like I tell you one thing, I would have taken advantage. I think he's making the right decision for him. And yes, people are going to be like, oh, they got Arch Manning coming out next year. Well, who cares? Like, well, maybe he'll stay one more year. Like, who knows?
Go be the
like,
guy, and it doesn't
5
matter
years now.
like, who's coming out.
You're making enough money to be set for life. Either decision. Like, why not? Why rush your childhood, man?
No, yeah, and if you do it right, you can be a pro for many, many years to come. You can only be in college for a select amount of years. If you're really, I guess not. I guess if you're unlucky, you can do it for like 6-7 years, depending on guys getting multiple years of eligibility and everything like that. But no, yeah, I get it, and I think, look, he's so young, and so young in terms of starts and games played and all that stuff. And we saw in the playoff some of the things that he was maybe lacking exposed a bit more with some of the decision making. The turnover issues also popped up a bit there in the previous 2 games. So I think it is a good move for him to go back. Again, I've said it multiple times, just curious about that next class. But hey, again, if you go, you be that dude, leave no doubt that you are the top quarterback, then hey, then it doesn't matter who's coming out. And you said it, Mel Kiper had him even ranked above Mendoza as the number 1 quarterback for him. So who knows what he's going to look like in that next class. But now this is just really interesting because the value of that number 1 pick goes up so much more now that I think that Dante Moore decides to go back to school. Before everybody in the comments freaks out, I've said it multiple times, you're finally in position to take a quarterback. I think they need to take Fernando Mendoza. But let's play devil's advocate here. Is there a world where the Raiders trade out of that first pick? Because now it is kind of like a quote-unquote 1 quarterback draft where you think they could get a haul from a team like the Jets or somebody else wanting to jump up to get him and being that desperate.
Yeah, so a couple thoughts. Number one, like if a team, let's just say the Packers, for example. What if they packaged Jordan Love and 2 first-round picks, right? Or Dak Prescott and 2 first-round picks. Would I take that, right? And for me, in order, like, I'm looking at the Raiders roster as a whole, knowing that we need so much help. Like, we have probably for sure 31st or 32nd weakest overall roster talent in the NFL. I don't think anybody, there's a reason we had the worst record in the NFL. I think the only way, Jesse, you can turn that team around in a shortish amount of time is having a quarterback on a rookie deal, right? So if you take on, and that's not to say that Mendoza is going to be better than Dak Prescott or Jordan Love or whatever, right?
Yeah, we don't know yet.
Or Jared Goff would be another great example. But to take on that contract, right, and give up the number 1 pick, like, yes, we would be immediately better, but we wouldn't be where we need to in terms, people, right? Geno Smith was fine with Seattle, right? But you look at what happens when he has limited talent around him and his flaws get exposed and magnified and all that. So the only way, like the reason that Washington 2 years ago, reason they were able to, they had a rookie on a quarterback, or a quarterback on a rookie deal, and right, they put some talent around. Obviously, he's very unique in his skill set and things like that. I'm talking Jane Daniels, but I think that for me, what is my pushback to people that, you wouldn't trade the number 1 pick for Jordan Love? No, I wouldn't, because it's not. Maybe like if it was just a random team, maybe, but not for the Raiders. Like, the Raiders need they need to tear it up by the roots, man. And that's a big old oak tree that you're just having to just dig those roots up. And in order for you to do that, you have to have a rookie on or a quarterback on a rookie deal, similar to what the reason that they've had such sustained success, the 49ers, is because up until this past year, Brock Purdy was on that 7th round, 3.5 years of just having to pay him bare minimum. And that's a beautiful thing, because now you're able to pay Kittle, you're able to pay Christian McCaffrey, you're able to pay Trent Williams and things like that. So I don't know if I actually answered your question, but I went down
you did.
A random foxhole. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
Hey,
again,
I love that answer.
What if the Jets offer 4 first-round picks, including the number 2 pick? The thing is, the Jets are probably going to be terrible the following year. Do you take it and then, assume you're going to get either Dante Moore or, Manning the following year, and then you just kind of stockpile and load up with free agency and just understand you're going to have another sucky year, but you're going to have a sucky year anyway? I don't know. That would be a Tom Brady. Hey, how much do you believe in Fernando Mendoza, which I'm a big, big believer. I think he's going to be a cornerstone quarterback. I think he's going to be one of those 60 million year guys on his second contract. And I'm super excited to see him wearing silver and black. But again, as JT the Brick would always say, there's always a price. Everybody has a price, right? And if a team came with just one of those where you're just like, well, I mean, we really do love this guy, but there's a really good quarterback class coming, and whether it's the Jets, we still get the number 2 pick and we get 3 more first rounds. Like that's hard to pass up.
Yeah, no, it would be really hard to pass up, but I like your take on that. I think regardless, and unless they give you multiple years of top picks and the number 2 pick overall this year, like I think I'm staying put and taking Mendoza. But again, it all boils down to what is their grade on Mendoza? Is he a Joe Burrow in their eyes? Is he a Matt Ryan in their eyes? Whatever that ends up looking like for them, that's obviously going to dictate what they do. But again, now just a fascinating wrinkle added into it with Moore going back. But as we now dive back into the coaching stuff, just because again, that's a big news there today with Dante Moore. I'm curious. Right now, then, would you rather lean towards? I know we talked about like offensive versus defensive coach. Like, is there one coach right now where you're like, man, like this is where I really want to see them lean more? Or if they did go the defensive route, which way would you say, okay, this is the guy that could build out the team all around him?
Yeah, if they go defensively, I think Jesse Minter just makes so much sense. I think Jim Harbaugh has shown at any level that he's coached at, whether it was University of San Diego to Stanford to the pros to Michigan, like he's had success. And Minter's been with him, not obviously at some of those those first couple, but he's been with him a long time. And so he kind of understands, how to be successful. And again, we're looking under like, who are those successful coaches you can mirror yourself and with your own little twist and feel pretty good about having success. And I think, Andy Reid's one, Kyle Shanahan or Mike Shanahan is one. And I think that certainly Jim Harbaugh's, getting into that conversation of anywhere he's been successful. So if I'm going defensive coordinator, I'm probably Jesse Minter has got to be number 1. Again, he's young. He's never had a head coaching opportunity. I think he would be a really, really good option. Now, I will say this with a caveat that I've played for plenty of offensive coordinators that made horrible head coaches.
Yeah.
Some of them are just meant to be offensive coordinators, right? Maybe they don't command
the Raiders
a room.
Have lived that.
And that's what's that?
The Raiders have lived that. They've seen that with Josh McDaniels,
Yes. And some just don't know how to command a room or command a room in an appropriate way. I remember Scott Linehan, if you remember that name, one of the best offensive minds I've ever had the opportunity to play for. In 2004, Minnesota Vikings, he was offensive coordinator. And then he became the Rams head coach when they were in St. Louis. And I think it was 2 seasons, and he just didn't have success. And it's not because he's not a brilliant mind. Like, the guy is unbelievable. But when he got in front of the group, and this was just the receivers or the quarterbacks or the offensive position groups, he didn't invoke like passion or where I want to go and run through a wall through him. It was just like, okay, you're very analytical, you're very smart, and that's cool. Like, stay in your lane. But again, the ego in us, like, always want to come out and challenge and see where we're at and take it for what we can. That being said, and I don't know that, I've never met Jesse Minter. I've seen him speak a couple times, so I have no idea what that would look like. I know he's beloved by anybody that's ever played for him, and that certainly means something. But a lot of people can say that about really good coordinators. I think I would take a shot at Grant Udinski personally. I think that what he's done in Jacksonville, again, a team that perennially is horrible. And, people wanted to call Trevor Lawrence a bust. I mean, they go and win a really who thought we'd say a really good division in AFC South this year, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Indianapolis Colts didn't even make the playoffs. They looked like the number one team in the league the first half of the season. They went
Mm-hmm.
what 14-3 or 13-4, one of the two. I don't think the average fan can name 8 players on that team, right? I mean, it's not like they're just loaded with talent. They had an injury to their number 2 pick in Travis Hunter, right? They brought Jacoby obviously over, so people are going to know that. Brian Thomas Jr. was a shell of himself, right? But again, he found a way to be successful. They ran the ball really well. They were super creative in what they did. And I would love to see a guy like that come and get a shot. And anytime, you can get positive comments like that from Kevin O'Connell, who said what he did, and somebody that I know and respect tremendously, and Kevin O'Connell, I'm going to listen to that. That takes me to my hot take, Hoag's hot takes. I know you love my Hoag's hot takes, Jesse.
Let's go. I was waiting for it. Let's go.
All right, I'm ready to get annihilated on X once again for saying this, but
he's warming up. Get the fingers ready, everybody.
So Brian Flores is obviously beloved by Minnesota fans because, quite frankly, I think right now he's probably the best coordinator in the NFL. What he did with that roster, I mean, they certainly have some talent, but their defense all year long, especially the last half of the season, was unbelievable. Nobody wanted to play Minnesota. I mean, they knocked out. I was at the game when they knocked out Detroit on Christmas Day. They had nothing to play for, like people like to say, and Detroit had everything to play for. They absolutely embarrassed Jared Goff. I think 6 turnovers. They beat Green Bay the following week. Green Bay didn't necessarily, they rested some of their guys, but I don't know if they scored. Oh, they scored a meaningless field goal at the last play of the game. But Brian Flores is not only well respected and loved by Minnesota fans, but across the NFL in terms of his defensive coordinator acumen. Even more so, Minnesota fans in general they're doing everything they can to make sure that he stays in Minnesota. What if Kevin O'Connell, who Tom Brady loves, what if Kevin O'Connell came to the Raiders and they put Brian Flores as a head coach in Minnesota? Kevin O'Connell took some unnecessary heat from media, from fans, and this and that, just because they had the season they did with J.J. McCarthy, all the things. He was taking shot after shot, and I'm just like, this is one of the best coaches in the NFL. Why are everybody, and I follow Minnesota as much as I do the Raiders, why is everybody just hating on him? And I'm just like, if I'm Kevin O'Connell, I'm just like, guys, what else do you want me to do? He receives so much heat. I could see them be okay walking away if that meant Brian Flores stays in the building and becomes a head coach. Again, I don't know what the trade compensation would take to get Kevin O'Connell over here, but I think it's really intriguing because I know that Tom Brady has always been a big fan of Kevin O'Connell. He's well respected. He would be, if I could have any coach in the NFL, if I could play for, I think he would be certainly on the Mount Rushmore for me, if not number one, just because he's a guy you want to grab beer with. He's a guy you want to talk X's and O's with. He's just a guy that you'd let watch your dog. He's just a good dude and also a really good ball coach. I think that would be a fascinating thing to see. Obviously not give up too much in terms of compensation, but it would be a win-win because Minnesota fans would keep Brian Flores. He could still, have the pulse of the defense. And it's one of those out of box, not a lot of people thinking about it because he's under contract, of course. Yeah. But so, and he's really good with quarterbacks. So.
He's really good with quarterbacks. And I'll be honest, I don't see that happening because I don't see Minnesota parting ways with him. But I love this what if game in this one, and I love this hot take because it's hey, how bad do you really want to keep Brian Flores in Minnesota? And if the Raiders could get a guy like him, what he's done with quarterbacks, unreal, and even done it probably with lesser talent at the quarterback position. Now let him go, and I know he grabbed J.J. McCarthy and all that stuff, but let him pick his guy number 1 overall. That would be insane. Also, obviously comes from a really good coaching tree as well. And so I want to touch on 2 quick things here before we get you out of here, because I do have another interview coming up in a bit here that I got to jump to. But I want to get your take, first of all, an O'Connell or someone from the McVay tree comes to Las Vegas, because they've interviewed a handful of guys from that Rams staff. All right. So what do you think offensively and even personnel wise it might look like in Vegas if somebody from that tree comes here? Just simply because look, like, things are going to change. There's going to be a lot of change. They have over $100 million in cap space. They've got, I think it's 10 or 11 draft picks as of right now is what we're expecting for the Raiders to have. So what do you think could be scheme wise what it would look like in Vegas with kind of who they have here now? And also just personnel wise, what you think they would want to add?
Sure. So I think we need 4 offensive linemen. I think we have one in Colton Miller that's a starter. I do not think we have another starting offensive lineman. And
Interesting.
I'm a fan of Jackson Powers Johnson, but I think the outrage over him not playing and things like that was a bit far-fetched to me, because here's why he's beloved. He's really good media interview, and he finishes plays really well. It's nice to have guys that finish plays and have a little nasty. But when you look at his hand placement, Jesse, when you look at his footwork, right, it is not up to snuff when it comes to like a starting center or starting guard in the NFL. It's just not. That was one of his biggest knocks coming out. And it hasn't improved. And look, we had the worst offensive line in the league, full stop, this past year. If he couldn't garner a starting position, right? These guys don't have vendettas versus players. That's just ridiculous, because if you have a vendetta versus somebody and you will end up on the street, right? And even if your dad's a head coach, like, I don't care. Maybe Brendan Carroll had it out for him, but at the end of the day, you're going to play your best 5 guys because you want to be successful. If you're successful, you get millions of dollars. That's just smart, right? So I think there's a reason, like, and again, we don't see, we see certainly he gets graded out in certain ways and this and that, and he had some nice plays, but you can't just be a good run blocking player. You have to be a good pass blocking player as well, especially if you're going to block for the number 1 draft pick in the NFL. So with that being said, I think you need to completely overhaul your offensive line, similar to what Houston did this past year. They went from one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive lines to at least acceptable this past year, or this current year. And then, I'm looking, I know you love talking about 13 personnel, which is something as a receiver I cringe at, because I hate 13 personnel. But
there's still one of us out there,
as a
though.
fan, I like it.
No,
I appreciate it. As a receiver, of course, I want 4 wides every time. But as a fan and a person that watches and understands, like, I was a big Ian Thomas. Q and I talked about Ian Thomas all the time prior to the season, and I don't think we utilized our tight ends. I would have loved to see us in more 13 personnel and then do what the Rams do in terms of flushing those guys out. You saw what the Bears did at the end of the game. They found mismatches for Loveland, right? They were in that 13 personnel, an extra O-lineman as well, and then they put Loveland out, and you're forced to have to put a linebacker, and a linebacker guarding a Colston Loveland, guarding a guy like Brock Bowers. It's a mismatch, and that's where you can really create those, and that's why I wanted a lot of 23 personnel, even, right? Get 2 running backs on the line, and then go out in 5 wides and see who's going to be matched up with Mostert, and just run them on a seam route against a Sam linebacker. Like, good luck trying to guard him in the seam, right? So that's where I would think, and I thought we were going to get that a little more with Chip Kelly, and now whether or not he faced some resistance, I don't know the behind the scenes, like you might know. But that was the one disappointing thing that I saw, and would like to see us continue to evolve, utilizing those tight ends, both in a power running game. The problem is, Brock Bowers is not a great blocker, especially a run blocker, right? And so it's pretty obvious that when you are, the whole reason you do it is to create those mismatches. Well, anytime Bowers is in the game, they have, a nickel in instead of, a big guy in. So it's a chess match for sure.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I'm glad that you brought up just the 13 personnel and a lot of the multiple tight end / even back sets. And so this was one thing too, and I may end up doing a full podcast on this at some point, but I would love your analysis on this. So when I was watching the games last weekend, and I'm watching the Niners and the way that Shanahan's calling that offense, and obviously the use of Juszczyk and George Kittle, and obviously Christian McCaffrey, I couldn't help but sit there and think like, okay, is there a world where the Raiders could kind of maybe bring someone in from that tree and almost emulate kind of the way that they use those guys, and who would those bodies be? So when Brock was coming out, a lot of guys said that he is George Kittle, but he also looks a little more similar to like an H-back. So I think he's kind of a mix between a Juszczyk and a Kittle. No knock, obviously, because Brock is elite and he is such a mismatch as a pass catcher. But is there a way that maybe between Brock and Michael Mayer, they could kind of recreate the usage of Kittle and Juszczyk? And then also, obviously, Ashton Jeanty is not Christian McCaffrey, but he does have the receiving chops, and we saw it used a lot. So I'm just curious your take, like, is there a world where they can kind of morph their own version of what Shanahan has created there in San Francisco with the personnel that they have in-house right now?
I would say a short answer is no. And okay. Because we aren't going to have a coaching staff that knows our players and their capabilities to the extent that Shanahan knows his guys, right? Yeah. Kyle Juszczyk is one of one. Like, there's very few fullbacks. I don't think there are any other fullbacks in the NFL that can do what he does in terms of run power, lead power, and smash a middle linebacker, but also line up like as a wing and then get the edge, or run an option route and be a realistic option. Like, it just doesn't happen. So we don't have that personnel. And then, I'm a Michael Mayer fan. I don't think Michael Mayer can beat man-to-man coverage. And that's a problem, right? I think that is why you haven't seen him flourish in the NFL like people were kind of expecting. And like, he is a solid run blocker, and he's a solid route runner, but against zone. But against man, he can't run away from these guys, and that's a problem, right? And so again, putting him in that hybrid role, you're limited, because if they do match up, whether it's a guy like, a strong safety that has decent cover skills, like I like their matchup better than I like our matchup. So that's a problem. Obviously, Brock, again, I just mentioned that he's not a great blocker. Like, Travis Kelce wasn't either, but they also didn't ask him to block, and people were fine with that. And they knew, but again, that's Andy Reid just being able to create mismatches, and then him having a relationship with his quarterback and just being able to freelance. Like, so we are so far away from having that conversation. I think we're 2 or 3 years of a team actually knowing your personnel, knowing what you do well, and knowing how to create those mismatches. But off the top of my head, if I look at the roster and whether Mostert comes back or not, like, that was the one thing where I was just like, you have the opportunity to go in 21 personnel or 22 personnel or whatever, and having 2 running backs, like, why not have Mostert in a pistol set and then motion Ashton out into the slot as the number 3 receiver, as number 2 receiver, and see how they adjust. And we didn't do any of that, or to your point, like, just creativity of having, receivers in the backfield and then motioning out or running an option route from it. But then again, do we have any receivers that really run great option routes? Jacoby was the guy, and now we really don't. Like, Trey Tucker, with his size, he should be that guy. He doesn't run. He's not a slot receiver. He's an outside receiver, right? Maybe Jack Besh will learn to roll, but my concern is, if Jack Besh is somebody that we're hoping for in the future, where was he the last 3-4 weeks of the season? Like, he was at best getting rotated in and out with that one guy that caught that touchdown against the Broncos.
Bo's nephew, Shedrick.
Yes, Shedrick. Yeah. So Jackson, so that's one of those things where, I don't know if they have high hopes for him in the future, since they've seen him for a year and he really wasn't leaned upon. Now, he had back spasms, certainly the second to last game and things like that. But so that's where I'm at.
Yeah. No, yeah, and that's a super fair take. I think at the end of the day, like ultimately, the Raiders do just need more creativity offensively and leaning towards maybe one of those younger guys, like you said, like a Grant Udisnik, or I know we're butchering his name so much. I keep looking down at it to make sure I couldn't say it right. We're adding like 10 different letters in there, but I think a young offensive mind like that could help kind of beat the curve, and that's what we've seen teams over the years do, where they bring somebody in, they do something different, and it's a copycat league. If it works, other teams will eventually catch on, but you can kind of get the jump on them early. Man, Ryan, we're diving into so much stuff, and there's so much more I want to get to, but I do got to run because I got another interview coming up here with Matt for our Raiders Rounder segment. But thank you so much, as always, for the time. We are definitely going to do this again, as the offseason rolls on here. There's going to be so much to dive in on once the Raiders do decide on who their next head coach is going to be. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But, man, as always, really enjoyed it, and thanks again for your time.
When are we starting the JR show, man? I'm ready.
Yeah, right? Hey, we got to get it going. We will make that happen to where this is a regular appearance. You know that. We'll make it happen.
All right, buddy. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yes, sir. You too. Yeah, there is never a dull moment with Ryan on the show. Like I alluded to, we're going to be bringing him on a much more regular basis for sure, because I love the back and forth. This time of year, it's also really fun to bring in a guy like him that's got such an interesting mind for the game. Obviously, he understands scheme and all those things, but he throws some really interesting ideas into the mix too that we can dive into and play that kind of what-if game, which I really enjoy. That's one of my favorite parts about the offseason is you can sit there and put a bunch of pieces together and think how things work. And also, too, like I love when we disagree because the back and forth is that much more interesting. Differing perspectives are always, always welcome between me and the co-host or the guest or whoever it is that I bring on for the day, and by you guys there in the comments. I love hearing differing perspectives. But speaking of keeping this thing rolling along, let's now turn the page and dive into another installment of Raiders Rounders with our guy Matt Peralt. All right, Matt, welcome back into another round of Raiders Rounders, the playoff edition. Obviously, the Raiders aren't in the playoffs, so to keep it Raiders related, we're going to kick things off with some timely news. The fact that Dante Moore officially said he is going back to college. He's about to get a bag to go back to college. A wild decision there. First of all, before we dive into how that's Raiders related here, I want to get your take on Dante going back to school.
I like the decision. I thought he really struggled mightily in the playoff game against Indiana. I think when you lose like that, if you're trying to build a resume for the NFL and trying to say, I'm the best, well, you just played the guy that's going to go number one, and he outplayed you in every facet. I mean, the dropping of the snaps, the interceptions, the poor reads. I think Dante Moore was exposed in that game by Indiana. So given the fact that in college football now he's going to make $6, $7, $8 million to go back to Oregon, it's not like it's going to be a hard place to be for him. He's going to make a ton of money to go and take over, keep that position. And it's interesting because Dylan Raiola, the quarterback for Nebraska, committed to Oregon. So he probably takes a redshirt year, backs up Dante Moore for a year, learns the offense, and then Moore leaves, and then Raiola comes over and takes over the offense for Dan Lanning. So it's setting up quite nicely for Oregon in the future for their run at the quarterback spot. But overall, I think it's the right decision because I think there would have been holes poked in his game like crazy after what happened in the playoffs against Indiana.
Yeah, young guy with a really high ceiling, and I don't think one game can make a massive difference, but the two games in the playoff, I think, kind of exposed some of the concerns that people did have. And at the end of the day, let's keep it real. That's the toughest competition they're going to face and the closest to NFL-style play that we'll see. You alluded to the fact we all think Fernando Mendoza is going to go first overall. Now that Dante Moore goes back to school, that solidifies it even more as a 1 QB draft. The odds for Mendoza to go first overall are now at minus 7,000. Is there any way in the world that the Raiders don't take him in your mind?
Yes. I think there's a possibility that they trade. Yeah. I do think that the Raiders could, if they're wowed by a Herschel Walker type, if you're my age, you know what that reference is. But if you get that type of trade package where someone's going to essentially, mortgage their franchise for you, and you can turn one pick into 10 or 5 first-round picks or whatever it might wind up being, something stupid, I do think they could trade it. Yeah, if they get overwhelmed, I think there's a 99% chance that they're going to keep Mendoza, but it really does hinge on who the head coach is going to be. So if they go heavy defense and if they go old school, like let's say they get a proven head coach, a guy who's been around for a while, and a guy that maybe says, hey, I can't bring in a quarterback without an offensive line because that kid's going to get burned out fast. And I can't bring in a quarterback when my team is lacking so much talent. I need to use that draft pick to trade and get 4 or 5 players that will help me right now. Yeah, I could see them trade it, but I think more than likely, pretty 99% shot, offensive-minded head coach gets hired, and Mendoza's the quarterback pick.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. The Raiders have stated the simple fact that they do have a mountain to climb. They're not trying to climb that mountain in a day, although 10 wins next year would be great. They're not looking for that. They're really trying to take this slow and make it the right rebuild. So that's why I think for sure they're going to go that way. But again, still interesting to talk about it and play the what-if game. Minus 7,000 is crazy. But so many Raiders fans probably already buying that 15 Mendoza jersey in silver and black. Take some of the intrigue out, but still so much great things to talk about for sure. Now, let's move along and kick it to the weekend that was for the first round of the NFL playoffs. That was a lot of exciting games, a lot of close contests, too. A real tough one to bet, I'd imagine. What was your take just overall from what you saw the first weekend of playoff action there?
That playoff football is still very unpredictable, and betting on it can be treacherous. I mean, look at the Rams were laying 10.5. They nearly lost the game outright. They covered, but they did not look good in the process against the Panthers. The Packers blow a 18-point lead in the second half on the road to the Bears, and now all the Matt LaFleur talk is flying around, and the Bears get to play another home game. The Patriots offense looked really bad, yet the Charger offense was even worse. And so the Patriots held the Chargers to 3 points. And the Patriots defense, when they have guys like Milton Williams and Robert Spillane, we talked about it last week. The fact that they had those two guys back is why I bet the Patriots, and it proved to be accurate that getting them back was the key. But the Pats, Drake May, didn't look good. I mean, CJ Stroud put the ball on the ground 4 times in one half. That's an NFL playoff record. Yeah. And yet we didn't see any action from the Steelers to take advantage of all the mistakes that were made by the Texans. And then eventually they got tired, and that Texans defense scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter against Aaron Rodgers and company. So 4-2 for underdogs, laying points in the playoffs. It's dangerous. It's tough to do.
Yeah, it is definitely. It's an unpredictable one for sure. Now it slates up some really interesting games coming our way this weekend. We'll kick things off with the first one of the weekend as the Bills go to Denver to take on the Broncos. The Broncos come to this one as 1.5-point favorites. A real tight matchup here on paper. You like the Broncos to seal the deal on this one?
Yeah, I just like them to win the game. I mean, the number is going to move a lot. I mean, right now you're looking at Denver -1 or 1.5. Some books in Vegas are still at a pick. I just took money line, laid -110, and just said I like the Broncos to win. It opened with Denver as a road favorite, which is ridiculous. I mean, it could have been the first time in 40 years. If the Bills were to close as a favorite, we've never seen in 40 years, we haven't seen a team be at home off a bye, be the dog for somebody to come into their building. Because this is, you think about it, it's the number 1 seed. They're off a bye. The team played last week, and the Bills played the first game on Sunday morning on the road, and now must play the first game on Saturday morning on a short week going to Denver at altitude. It doesn't make sense given the injury report that we've seen with the Buffalo Bills and the number. I mean, Josh Allen himself has got 3 ailments listed on the injury report. His hand's banged up for hitting the helmet when he threw. His knee and ankle is screwed up for when he got that goal line rush that got you twisted and turned in a wrong direction. I don't like Bo Nix. I like Bo Nix at home. But this defense for Denver, I think the game is under, and I think we go with the Broncos on the money line.
Yeah, that's an interesting game for sure. I'm real curious to see if the Denver team that basically was like the cardiac kids all year long can figure out a way to really get their game solidified and not have to play this whole comeback thing.
11-2 in 1-score games this year, and they won their last 11 in a row. They opened up the year 0-2 in 1-score games, and then they ran off 11 straight. So, I mean, cardiac Broncos is a good way of describing it because they just found ways to win games. Even when they're down big in the fourth quarter, they found ways to win games this year. So is that going to be a kiss of death? It could be against the Bills team, but this defense, I mean, the Broncos, I think it's going to look like the Patriot game a little bit, 16-3 type final.
Yeah, what they've done on defense is super impressive. And it's tough for the Bills too, man. Like for so long you've been rooting for them to be able to get past the Chiefs. The Chiefs finally don't make it in, and now they're going to have to go play at the top seed, on the road there. I'm fascinated to see how that one pans out. But another really interesting game that we've seen a couple times this year, the evening game on Saturday. You got the beat up 49ers who just won't go away, heading to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, who are 7-point favorite at home. You like the Seahawks to have another solid outing against the Niners, huh?
All right, so full disclosure, I've got 14-1 tickets on both teams. So I'm going to lose one of them regardless. I'm going to get one of them to the NFC Championship game, which is big because I can start to hedge off that ticket once they get there. So I don't need to bet a side in this game, but I will because of the numbers for Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold as a favorite of 6 points or more. We've talked about this before, but he is now 13-0 straight up, and he is 10-3 against the spread when he's favored by 6 or more. He's favored by 7 now. This is a banged up team for the 49ers. I mean, without George Kittle, who is Brock Purdy going to be throwing to? I mean, there's just so many injuries. And then obviously the defense has been banged up all year. I thought the defensive game plan last week by Robert Saleh was tremendous, but I think it was more on the Eagles side than the Niners side. That was more of an indication of how broken the Philadelphia Eagles were and how disjointed the offense was than what we're going to see from a Seahawks offense that just played really well in week 18 at home against these very Niners. I just think it's too much too quick with too many injuries for San Francisco. Hell of an effort, hell of a season, but it ends with Seahawks by a 10-point plus victory.
No, yeah, I agree, and I think Shanahan needs to win Coach of the Year regardless of the outcome for this with everything that they've dealt with there. I'm real curious, too, to see as this coaching search continues for the Raiders if there's some recency bias with Robert Saleh and what he's managed to do with that defense with all the pieces that they've lost. Again, I keep saying fascinating, but another fascinating game to watch. But I agree with you. I think the Seahawks get this one done as well. Now we go to one that you are very invested in. We've got the Houston Texans heading to New England to take on your Pats, who were confusing the hell out of the Chargers, apparently. They had no idea what they were running defensively.
Best bet in this game is the under 41. CJ Stroud without Nico Collins, who I don't think is going to play in this game with a concussion. He couldn't do anything with Nico Collins against a Steelers defense. It's not nearly as good as the Patriots defense. The Patriots, when they had full health, and Christian Gonzalez was back at practice today, he did have a concussion, but I do think he'll play for the Patriots. He's not traveling. We do see, obviously, players that when you travel with concussions, the flight tends to knock you out pretty quick. They don't want to risk it. He's at home. He's not flying. So I do think Gonzalez will play. I don't think Nico Collins will play. But you've got a Patriots defense that was a top 10 unit when they were fully healthy. And Milt Williams had an amazing game against the Chargers. I think he'll have a really good game against this Texans offense. I don't think they run the football the way they did against the Steelers. And if they can't run, that's on CJ Stroud. I would bet him to throw a pick in this game. I don't think they score much at all. But on the flip side, the Patriots won't score more than 17 points against this defense for the Texans. This is going to be really tough. The left side of the Patriot offensive line, 2 rookies, Will Campbell, he knows all about Will Anderson. They faced each other when he was at LSU and Anderson was at Alabama. He was a freshman and had to try to stop him as a junior. He knows how tough this guy is going to be. Drake May is going to have to be a wizard, and he can't do what he did against the Chargers, which was hold on to the football way too long. I just think the under 41 is the best bet in the game.
Yeah, that front is going to be coming after him. That's actually the lowest total of the weekend, too. So interesting to be going under on that one. I'm going to be curious to see how that does work out. And as we wrap the weekend up, another wild one, just because the Bears and that, I think, 18-point comeback it was, that was insane. Yep. I think nobody saw that one coming. I started casually watching that game in the second half and then was like, oh, my God, they're coming back. And now they're at home as 3.5-point dogs against the Rams, who look like one of those teams this year. How do you wrap your head around this one? Because this one does seem like a real tough one to bet.
Yeah, it's hard. I think you have to hold your nose and take the Bears +4. And there are 4s in the market, but I think you have to do that just because of the road favorite component. In the playoffs, it's just so difficult to be laying points on the road. And while the Rams are the better team, I just have some PTSD from last year's play against the Eagles in the weather, and we're looking at maybe a historically cold game at Soldier Field, if the Arctic forecast continues to hold, and we're taping this here on Wednesday, before the game happens on Sunday night. Right now, they think it's going to be 9-degree air temperature with -10 wind chill. If that drops, if that gets to be a -0 temperature game with like a -20 wind chill, you're talking about an LA-based team. You're from that part of the country. You understand. Dome team on top of that, going to Soldier Field to play against the Bears. Not many teams fare well in that type of situation against Chicago with a football that's going to be obviously rock hard and slick as heck. I just think you take the points at +4. Rams could win. Rams win by 3, or maybe the Bears just keep this magic going and they win because of home field advantage in the postseason.
Yeah, and just to play devil's advocate, another guy in the Chicago Bears quarterback in Caleb Williams, who played in sunny Southern California as well. This is his first true test in a game like this at home in the Windy City. I'm curious to see maybe how that affects him too. And the Rams, look, they've run the ball very effectively with a lot of their 3 tight end sets that they've been doing. A lot of big bodies there. I keep saying another fascinating game to see how this one pans out. Just like scheme wise, the gameplay, the coaching matchup in this one. Like, my God, the 2 offensive minds on either side of this are going to be so much fun to watch. How too do the Bears and Ben Johnson handle all the stunts that Shula likes to run too?
Well, there's a factor as well. You mentioned Ben Johnson, so we can bring this up.
Yeah.
Sean McVay has a very close tie to Matt LaFleur. They're all from this same world, okay?
Forgot about that, yeah.
When you are caught on camera and your official account sends out, "I hate those guys," meaning Matt LaFleur.
Yeah.
I bleep the Packers is what he said, and they put it out, and they didn't bleep it, by the way. They put it out there. And you have that handshake go viral. You just wonder about McVay if he has a chance to stick it to the Bears and Ben Johnson. That's where I've seen people like, okay, say they're up by 3 and they have a chance to kneel it out. Do they kneel it out, or do they go and do a bleep you touchdown at the end to win the game by 10 points to make it look worse for Ben Johnson? That has to factor into the handicap, because you've seen it publicly. I've seen Stephen A. Smith talk about it on ESPN, on Get Up and First Take, about the fact that there is this feeling. I don't like Ben Johnson. I'll be on the record. I don't like him. I think he makes ridiculous calls. He's an offensive genius, but sometimes he gets too excited about himself and feels himself too much and makes calls that you're like, what are you doing? They also start the game way too slow, okay? They are notorious, and Caleb Williams too, slow starters. If they have a really slow start in the first half against this Rams team, I don't think LA blows a 21-3 lead at half. Yeah. So they better be ready to go for the full 4 quarters.
I can see people in the comments saying the irony of a guy wearing a Bears cap, and I know that you rotate caps through and everything, but saying that, as you're doing that, I couldn't help but look at the cap. For one,
I don't. If Ben Johnson was my coach, I probably would love him. Yeah. But being a guy who watches a lot of football, I just know that ego and bravado burns you in the NFL, because generally speaking, the league does not like that. The league does not like coaches that behave the way he's been behaving.
They definitely don't. But I love the intrigue. I'm all for the pettiness. Like, I love that. And I would love to see, I'd love to see a McVay really stick it to him for his boy, or how that works out. I did see just an aside. Fan. Yeah. Yeah. So you're all about that stuff as well.
Because I hated when David Ortiz started to become friends with the Yankees, and we started to see the Red Sox and Yankee fans. Yeah, I hated it. I was like, get out of here. I want straight blood feud. So give me a Packers Bears blood feud. I'm good. Because my Packer friends are funny, because they say, well, we never think about the Bears. Like, the Bears, we think about the Lions. We think about other teams. The Packers don't worry about the Bears, and now they've got to worry about the Bears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely have to now. And there was a funny thing, just aside before we wrap this up. If you guys haven't seen it, make sure you go find on Twitter somewhere. I saw it was like an AI video of the handshake where they had the AI morphed. Yeah, it did punching him and then punching the other, his get back coach that was behind him or whatever. I was like, okay, AI is wild. This is hilarious. But and then he's like flexing. I thought that was hilarious.
Yelling and screaming, and Matt LaFleur just doe-eyed. He doesn't know what to do with it. But if you believe the rumor mills and believe the people who are talking in the media about it, LaFleur is furious about what has happened. And he losing twice in 5 games, ending 0-5, both losses to the Bears, both in collapsing fashion, one with the onside kick that wasn't recovered by Randall Cobb, and then the 21-3 blowing that in the second half. And I mean, frankly, the play calling was asinine in that game for the Packers. Why are you throwing the football with 3 minutes to go, stopping the clock and not forcing the Bears to use their timeouts? I couldn't figure it out. And then the defensive effort was just horrible for the Green Bay Packers. So he's stewing on this, and he's got friends. I mean, Matt LaFleur is a popular guy, and one of his good friends is Sean McVay.
Definitely. Again, I've said it a million times in this segment already. It's going to be fascinating to see how that one unfolds. And I cannot wait for it. Playoff football is so much fun. As always, Matt, it's so much fun chopping it up with you too, man. Like I said, we're racking up a lot of new subscribers, which is great. The views have been through the roof. I'm loving it. People are engaged here this time of year now as things are looking up for the Raiders in terms of the future for them. And there's some real positivity. So there has been a ton of new faces. So for the folks that have not had a chance to watch your work until today, tell them where they can find the rest of your stuff on a daily basis.
If you like Just Picks, the Daily Juice podcast on YouTube, you can go and search it. It's 7 days a week, 365. It's Just Picks. If you want more ranting and raving, the Bostonian versus the Book, BVB as we call it, you can search at Boston versus the Book on both YouTube and X. You can follow the shows there.
Yep, definitely. Go give him a follow, guys. It's a good time. Does great work, and he's been a good friend of the program as well. As always, Matt, thanks for your time. We'll catch up with you next week. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's show. Next time you see me, we'll be right back here in the Silver and Black Sports Network studios, breaking down Fernando Mendoza's performance in the national championship game. Like I said, I think it's a foregone conclusion that he is going to go number 1 overall. We'll see how everything goes in that national championship game, and I'll be diving in to tell you guys what I saw from that game to give you the live reaction there. And that will serve as our Tuesday podcast for next week, because, again, we're going to be releasing that on Monday night. Then we'll be back to our normal cadence that Tuesday and Thursday mornings. So as always, guys, thank you for watching, listening, subscribing, checking out the newsletter, all that stuff. And for you guys just taking us in however the heck you take us in, because there are so many different ways to do it. But like I say, each and every week, it is so much fun rocking and rolling with you guys. And we will see you again, like I said, on Monday after that national championship game. Take it easy and enjoy your weekend, guys.